I'm Sophie.
I'm Cass.
And this is
Podclass
with Sophie
and Cass.
So, okay, in today's episode, we're going to talk about the importance of movement in our lives. When Cass was the one who came up with the idea of doing this episode because she came up with the topic. And when she first told me, I was like, I feel like it's such a broad topic, but at the same time, it was weird because I relate to this topic so much because I'm very active, I would say. And researching the importance of it, for me at least, which we're going to mention later, correlating it with mental health, I think is like a huge thing and it's not talked about enough.
Yeah. So, I chose this topic because I actually listened to a podcast I want to say this was like a few months ago. And we're going to talk about some of the things that we learned from listening to that podcast. But it's from this professor. Her name is Kelly McGonigal, something like that. She's from Stanford, and she talked about the joy of movement. And she just brought up a lot of aspects of how movement really helps us deal with depression, anxiety, loneliness, and how it can also make us feel like different versions of ourselves just through movement, just through doing that. So I think that it's just something that we should highlight because I feel like the focus, there is a hyper focus on working out to get a certain kind of body type or like to lose a certain amount of weight, and we're kind of moving away from the point that it also makes us just feel good, like in the moment it makes us happier and just feel lighter. So yeah, that's a big thing.
I found it very interesting what you said about like different versions of ourselves, because like the examples she gave is like you feel differently when you're doing an activity like yoga versus like when you're running or when you're lifting weights at the gym. And this is so true. Like when I'm lifting, sometimes I'm like, look at me, I'm so strong. And then when I'm doing yoga, I'm like, I'm such a light feather, you know what I mean? Like, and it's also like how you perceive yourself, because when you're looking at yourself maybe in the mirror, like while you're doing these different exercises, I guess you see like different versions of who you are. And I think that's like pretty cool that like through a simple thing, let's say like just moving differently, you can be someone different.
Yeah. And I think that how they talked about it, you're also just be like, since you're able to access these different versions of yourself, you're able to do things that you never thought you could do. And you're also just more receptive to new experiences as well, because you're like, okay, like, I never thought I could maybe do like a push-up, and now I'm gonna try to push for like, I don't know, a 5K, and then you just keep pushing different boundaries, and then you're like, wow, like I personally had that experience. I hated running. Like I really hated running. I couldn't stand it. Like I thought it was so boring, but over time, excuse my cat. Over time, he's a kid. I was just, liking it more and more until I naturally was like, you know what, let me try a half marathon. Like, I think it would be challenging. It would be interesting. And again, I go back to my reason for that wasn't, hey, I want to train to lose weight. No, I want to try something that difficult because I want to test my body. I want to see what I can do. So I think, like you also are just able to find out new things about yourself.
Yeah, I have to say that I absolutely hated running. Like Cass knows this because she's the one who got me into running. I just like, and it's so true what you said about like pushing yourself. Like when we were living in Malaga, you did the half marathon, I did not, but I will say I would have never thought my like long distance, I did, I think 15 kilometers, like the maximum that I ever did. And that to me is like insane that I was able to run that much. Like even like now, like here, I've taken it into like in a very serious matter of like, okay, twice a week I have to run 4K or 5K because I don't know, like I have incorporated it into my workouts and I feel like I need that cardio now versus before because I wasn't, I guess, used to it, or my body, like, I guess didn't like need it as much, and now like it's not even like a hard thing for me to say like, oh, I have to go on a run. Like I just do it. Also one of the things they mentioned in the podcast, and this is so true, music, like, if I feel lazy, I'll like put on I'm like, okay, I'm just going to play like a song that I know I like. And then it gets me started. Like I change and then it gets me going, which again, like obviously like the importance of music, like have a nice
Yeah.
playlist for yourself.
Yeah.
I think another thing too is the importance of finding what's right for you, because not everyone likes to do the same thing. So if you don't like something, you're probably not going to stick to it. So find something that suits
Yeah.
what you like.
Yeah. I 100%. Like, I think that for, I think a majority of my like teen years to adult life, I've just been very active. So I've been able to just try different forms of movement. I tried cycling, but that wasn't like actually on the road cycling. I was just taking the classes. But yeah, like for when you're talking about music, the music used to pump me up. I'm sorry, like that's a side note, but sometimes they put like merengue and I'd be like, okay, let's go. I'm ready.
Go hello.
On the bike. But it was really, really fun. And then I got into running and I used to row and now I do yoga and that's my jam. Like I'm like, yeah, like that I can do for the rest of my life. No problem. Like I really enjoy that. I do like to run just to like feel some kind of like movement. Like I feel like I'm using my limbs and whatever. But to be honest, yeah, like I think it's amazing that we can try different kinds of things and that's exciting to me, to be honest. And it brings it again, not to just the point of losing weight or looking a certain kind of way, but just doing it because it makes me feel good and it's a stress reliever. And every time I do a workout, I feel better after.
Yep. Like for me, I feel like here in Spain, restrictions with COVID have been very, very strict since it started. Now they've loosened up, but because of that, I was forced to find alternatives to things that I used to do before to release energy. Like, I'm very outgoing. I love to go out, but because we couldn't really do much, I started exercising more, which is why I've gotten more fit. But anyways, I started doing it to feel better, not so much because I wasn't doing it with the intention of like looking better. Like, you're gonna look better, but that wasn't like my goal. Now every time that I feel like I'll do something, if I feel a little bit of anxiety or stress, I'll do something. Like if I'm PMSing, for example, and I know that I'm tired, I'll go for a walk. If I have more energy, then I'll do like a HIIT workout and I'll lift weights. It also, it depends on the workout. Like, where are you doing it? Because for me, it feels very different to lift weights in like a closed space than to go running outdoors. It's a completely different feeling.
And they talked about that too, how like working out outdoors kind of like mimics like drug like feeling. Like you feel more like you get more realizations, you just have time to be outside with the universe and nature and just
like a spiritual thing.
Yeah, and that's just from a like a nice like maybe 20-minute walk just out. Like, and I think that you're just also getting fresh air. It's a change of scene, environment. You're not closed in. So I am happy that restrictions are lifting little by little because we are able to feel more comfortable with doing that too.
Yeah. And also, like you mentioned, like you did rowing and stuff. I think it's also really important, like if you have kids, to get them into sports at an early age. Even if they don't like what they're doing, they'll figure it out. Maybe they're doing soccer and they don't like soccer, and then you get them into basketball, but keep them active because I've noticed through friends of mine and in comparison to other friends of mine, the ones who have not done sports in high school, elementary school are the ones who don't really take care of their health so much now as adults versus someone who has always been active. Like I've always done something. You know, I did basketball for 6 years. Then I started going to the gym. Like I've always been pretty active. So it's part of my life. So I think that, with kids, it is very important to get them involved into some type of physical activity when they're young, because also it helps again with mental health,
Yeah.
not only adults suffer from anxiety. As an educator, I feel obligated to address this. Kids also can feel anxious, they can also feel stress, and they need ways to channel it. So
Mhm.
yeah, it is important.
Yeah. And I feel like, yeah, definitely. I think it's so important. Like my kids, they're gonna do something. I don't care what it is they do,
Yeah, what it is,
except
yeah.
except football. I may get some haters for that, but I'm sorry. I don't want my kids having concussions.
Well, as
So
a Spaniard, American football, no offense, it does seem a little violent.
yeah, it's a little crazy out there.
A little crazy. But to each their own, you know what I mean? Everyone's
Just read
free
the
to do what
facts.
they want.
Concussions.
Um, no, yeah, but yeah, no, I mean, a lot of sports are dangerous, to be honest. Like it is kind
Yeah,
of scary. It is kind of scary,
yeah.
but do
But
something.
there's risks with everything, but there's just
Yeah.
more risks in some things than other things. So there's always
Yeah.
that to consider.
Yeah.
But
And mhm.
no, that's it. I was just like,
Yeah.
move
No,
on.
because I mentioned like talking about like, the different I wanted to say countries or culture, and I could not decide
No,
on
sure.
which word. Depending on the different cultures, like we perceive also exercise as a different thing. For
Oh yeah.
example, I found it very difficult living in the US. I found it, especially in Miami. I mean, I don't know about Jersey, but in Miami, because it's so hot, it's so difficult to like go for a walk, because you step outside, automatically you're sweating. Everyone drives everywhere. You know what I mean? So you leave your house, you get in the car, you go to a restaurant, you eat, you get in your car, and then you go back home.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to stay passively, let's put it that way,
Yeah.
passively active, versus here, you walk everywhere. You don't even really need a car. If you don't have one, you can move just walking everywhere. So I find it easier. Like sometimes here, I'm like, oh, I'm not going to work out today, but maybe I'll walk to the city center and I'm like, oh my God, I
Awesome.
walked 10 kilometers today. You know what I mean? Just because I had to run
Yeah.
errands. So I think that's a big part of it. The fact of like the excessive use of driving,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
know?
But and I actually listened to this was in school that it was not a lecture, that was like some kind of event, but they were talking about the ways that cities are formed. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
I've ever talked about this on the podcast before. Maybe I'm like some, yeah. Well, anyways, so they talk about how cities were formed and how the European style of like the roundabout actually has serves a purpose for like the accessibility of like walking, where like huge intersections like we have here, they just don't promote like a walking
The
mobile
thing
like
is too, like for
environment.
example, my city is how old?
Yeah.
Like over 2000 years old. How old is Miami? I'm pretty sure not even 200 years old.
Yeah.
So back then, they didn't have no cars, so that
Yeah.
happens to most European cities because they're so old. They were designed by those people like thousands of years ago, and they're not
Mhm.
just, which is why you're going to see a lot in big European cities. The city center is going to be very unorganized. The cities, it's very easy to get lost. But as you go towards the outskirts of the cities, which are usually the newer parts of the cities, you're going to find more similarities to American cities where it's more organized because they're
Mhm.
newer. I
Yeah.
love how we just like shifted into this like history geography lesson.
But no, but I think
But
that's
yeah,
so it's so important to highlight, because you got to understand a healthy lifestyle isn't about you hitting the gym 6 times a week. It's just about like sometimes, yeah, like it sucks, like I don't really want to go on a walk in my neighborhood. I don't have anywhere to go or anything to see, but I can drive to the park and have a stroll
mm-hmm.
maybe like once or twice a week, and that in itself is good enough. to make up for like the fact that I'm not able to do that, most
Yeah,
days.
and also I think, it depends on the jobs as well. Like there's people that if you have like an office job where you're sitting for 8 hours straight, 9 hours straight, there's exercises that you can do in between, like give yourself a little break, like maybe stretch a little bit, maybe do like a little like 5 squats, and you're going to be like, how embarrassing. No, you know what's embarrassing? You getting to your 30s and not being able to lean down. That's embarrassing. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
get moving, find ways to do it, because for example, like, and I've worked in both, like sitting down, because now when with the online teaching, I don't move,
That's
I'm
all you
sitting
do.
down, yeah, versus working in a classroom physically, you're constantly walking, you're always standing, and you feel it, like your body feels different, you know. And I also feel like, at least for me, sometimes, like if I have a rule, which I don't know if this is healthy, and I'm not promoting anything, but I have a rule: I never go more than 3 days without working out. Like 3 days is my limit, because if I pass the 3 days, it's just harder for me to bounce back.
Yeah.
Because also, like, the less that you do, the harder it is for you to start doing it,
That's true. And I noticed that gosh, my mood is just really, really bad. And I remember this past week, I came to the conclusion, I'm like, okay, if I'm like in a really shit mood, like I just need to do something physically, because I can't, like, it is the one time where I'm switching my focus to what my head's telling me to what my body's telling me, and able to just, like it's like literally meditative. Like you're just there thinking about how you feel in your body. You're not going through thoughts, and okay, maybe it'll come here and there, but your main focus is like, okay, I need to okay, I need to like focus on my breathing, if I'm running, for example. I need to watch my form. Okay, like, push through this. You can do this, whatever. And like I'm literally coaching myself in my brain. Like that's all I'm thinking about. And I finish and I'm like, wow, like I did that. All right, awesome. I feel so good. Like, and whatever was on your mind, half of the time, just you don't even think about it anymore.
or you feel differently about it, honestly.
Or
like
yeah, your perspective.
like I've had days, especially like with the PMS and stuff, where I'm like, I feel like super insecure, or like, we all have those days, and then like I get a workout in and I'm like, insecure, like, hey, like look at you, you know what I mean? Like you're strong and capable of doing anything, so also, like, literally, scientifically, things happen in our brains when we work out. Like this isn't you just acting up because you act up. In the podcast, they mentioned, what was that called? Not the espérate.
Oh, we're talking
not the
about
end not the endorphins, but the
endocannabinoids.
that thing. They mentioned that yeah. You can you can proceed.
Yeah, so which is interesting, because a lot of people think like, oh, when I work out, my endorphins or whatever. It's actually not your endorphins. What it is your endocannabinoids, which just kind of like make you change your perspective on things, feel lighter, feel happier, which is, cannabinoids, same thing that you have in like marijuana. However, you don't like, that's more of a calming effect, whereas this is just more energizing, and you're still kind of having the same effect. So it's like free drugs.
Yeah, and then they also mentioned the dopamine, which the dopamine receptors increase if you exercise, which as you age, the receptors decrease, not in number, but in intensity, she was saying. They didn't do studies to really talk about numbers. What dopamine does is, which I found so interesting, is like, for example, capability of acknowledging joy. Like the higher your dopamine receptors are, the more that you're capable of feeling happy, basically, because you acknowledge the feeling of happiness and all of that. So I think, and it's true, because after you work out, or at least I feel like the people that exercise or are active regularly are, I'm not going to stereotype, but like from my experience, are more like emotionally available, or like more emotionally intelligent, just because I guess you feel more comfortable to talk about certain things, because also they say that like your more open to building relationships with others. Like you feel more comfortable to be open about emotions and feelings with others after you work out, which they use the example of one of the ladies in the podcast that she was a mom, and she was saying like, I just feel like I can be a better mom after a workout, you know, because I took that time to do the work for myself so that then I can be better for my kids and for my husband.
Yeah. It's so nice. That was one of my favorite things about the podcast, about fostering a connection with others through movement. Because I definitely feel that like with Ant, like me and him both practice, and sometimes we'll just practice like alone or like this may sound like super corny, but there's this move in yoga.
Up, Anthony?
That's all she would say. But there's this move, it's like upward facing dog, and when you're an upward facing dog, your chest is open. And you know, a lot of how she mentioned also in the podcast, a lot of movements in yoga are connected to a certain feeling. So sometimes you open up your throat, that's your throat chakra. It's like, you know, you're speaking your truth in a way. So now I'm opening my heart chakra, which is openness, like love, being receptive to love and happiness and stuff. So like when we're flowing together and we come to that pose, that feels like such a vulnerable, but like, gosh, like I literally feel it now. Like I don't even know how to explain it, but it's like I'm literally opening my heart to you, like in this moment, you know. And it's just like that's so powerful to be able to feel something like that, and no words are spoken, you know. It's just
like vulnerability just through your body. Yeah.
So I think honestly, movement, that's why I love yoga classes too, because I'm able to move with other people, or sometimes even when you're running and like you pass by somebody else's running too, it kind of motivates you to keep going.
It's like a weird connection, because it's like we're both going through the same thing right now.
We are both suffering together.
You know, literally, like I'll be running and I see someone and I'm like, I feel you. I will say though, like, because she did mention, like you said, like couples like working out together. And okay, so first they mentioned like couples working out together, that like it does harvest a connection, blah blah whatever. But in my case, I feel, which is something she mentioned after, in my case, I feel like I work out better alone. Which is why I work out in my house. Literally, I don't even go to a gym. Like I don't want people around me when I work out. The only people that I have ever enjoyed working out with is Cass and my friend Mitzi. Like, and I think it's because when we work out, even if we're doing it together, we kind of give each other like space, like, cause we have a different pace, like it's normal. But they were saying, which I found so interesting, like after you finish the workout, even if you're doing it separately, when you come together, there's a higher chance of you like being more like open to the person, and just like, and that makes so much sense, because y'all need to work out more. That's all I'm gonna say.
Point blank, that's it. In the podcast.
Like just do something, because honestly, like this miscommunication and like not being open to accept things is just so annoying. And it's like, if exercise can help you with that, then do it. You know what I mean? Like, come on.
It's for free.
I will say though, like this is kind of like off topic, but not off topic. Running. Because one thing they mentioned about like the runner's high, because obviously because of the semantics of like the expression runner's high, I thought that it was only when you run. And she said, no, you can get runner's high as from doing other exercises, as long as you bring your heartbeat up for 30 minutes. So like if you do like a HIIT, or maybe like even like an intense like yoga practice, you can still feel runner's high after, which makes sense, because like when you do like an intense workout, you do feel that way.
Yeah. You reach a point, and it is because you're in the flow, but I'm sorry to interrupt. It's just, you do reach a point where like throughout anything you do, if it is a sustained effort, it becomes like easy for like, you know, you've been doing it and you're like struggling and it's hard. And then there comes a point where you're like, yo, I've been doing it for this long and I feel good now. Like I could keep going. So
you get addicted to like exercise in a way, not in an unhealthy way, you know, because there is like some disorders with that. But I mean, like more like, you know, like in an informal way, let's put it that way, where like if you get into working out, again, if you find what's right for you, and you start seeing yourself progress, not only physically, because you will see some physical progress. You're going to be like, oh my God, like my legs look tighter or whatever. But you're also going to see yourself like, oh my God, I was only able to lift a couple pounds a month ago, and now look at me, how much weight I can lift. Or I was only able to run a mile last week, and now I'm able to run 2. And you seeing that progress is like everything else in life. If you think about our entire lives, the way society's set up, it's us progressing. When you're in school, you pass to 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade. When you're at working somewhere, you're looking for a promotion. And the sense of gratification towards yourself once you elevate to the next level, you can also find that in exercise as well. Which in a way is, instead of looking for that gratification in an external source, which would be like a promotion, it's an internal thing because it's just your body. You know, I really went like super intense there.
No, but no, it's beautiful to see too, because you're just like, wow, like again, you're able to see like, wow, I'm capable of doing so much more. And then that can translate to your personal life as well, like what you do with your career or hobbies and whatnot.
And your time, you become very mindful of what you spend your time on, because you're like, I could be doing something else, you know. But yeah, I mean, so okay. So I think we addressed everything. I feel like we addressed it in a very personal way, which I think is good, you know, because at the end of the day, this is our podcast.
And we do what we want. No, I'm kidding.
No, and you know, we want to also like show who we are through it, not only statistics, basically. So I hope you guys enjoyed.
Yes. And see you next time. Take a listen, like, subscribe to everything. All right.
Please. And rewatch like 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, and 5. Just clickety click. Click the play button, por favor. Anyway. Goodbye.
All right, goodbye.